So this will probably be out of date when this video goes out, but I think this article and articles like this very often tend to have a lot of insight as to what might happen next and where things may go. So this is obviously to do with the Supreme Court case on the prolonging of Parliament. So this is from The Observer, and according to this, the Supreme Court is poised to rule against Boris Johnson, says legal expert. The framing of verdict on prorogation of Parliament may set off a catastrophic eruption of volcanic, a constitutional eruption of volcanic proportions. Misread that word completely. So, Boris Johnson would have no option but to recall MPs to Westminster if the Supreme Court rules he misled the Queen, and senior legal sources told The Observer yesterday. There is a growing belief in the legal community that the court will find against the government when it hands down its momentous verdict on Johnson's decision to prolong Parliament. Something else I want to mention. We're doing this on Sunday, and we've just heard this morning that the Sunday Times, no, it was the Sunday, well, not Sunday Times, was it the Times? I can't remember now. It was either the Times or it was the Mail on Sunday, had to pull their main leading story because they were going to publish the address of one of the judges involved in this trial. I mean, what is going on that you are going to publish that information? That is just asking for trouble completely. And like I say, the judge involved immediately got lawyers involved once he heard, and it got pulled straight away. So we'll continue. So the prospect of the court finding against the Prime Minister has left the UK heading towards a constitutional eruption of volcanic proportions, according to a senior legal figure who asked not to be named. He said that he also believed the case would go against the government. Before the case, few thought the court would determine that Johnson's advice to the Queen to suspend Parliament for 5 weeks would be found unlawful. But over the course of the 3-day hearing, the opinion has dramatically shifted. The dominant feeling among the informed observers is that the government is on the ropes and it is going to lose, said Philip Sands, QC, the Professor of University at Law of College London. The panel of 11 justices heard appeals rising out of the 2 separate legal challenges in England and Scotland, in which leading judges ruled for different conclusions. The court's president, Lady Hale, said that the judges hope to give their decision earlier this week. We are solely concerned with the lawfulness of the Prime Minister's decision to advise Her Majesty to prolong Parliament on the dates in question, he said. As we have heard, it is not a simple question, and we will now carefully consider all arguments that have been presented to us. And you'll notice the Brexiteers are freaking out about this, but this is exactly what you wanted. The exact things that you said apparently can't happen because we are members of the European Union. But we are members of the European Union, and here we are. It's like we had sovereignty all along. So experts were quick to identify 3 aspects of the case that should trouble the government. First, the judges spent a large proportion of their time exploring the possible remedies. What they might determine must happen if they find against the Prime Minister. In other cases, judges seldom devote effort to discussing remedies if they are not seriously considering finding in favour of the complaint, legal sources say. Second, Hale's forensic questioning of the government's lawyer, Lord Keane, suggested she was dubious about the arguments he was presenting. Third, the fact that the court has yet to deliver a decision should send alarm bells ringing. In the words of one legal expert, the fact that they haven't given a decision now, with reasons to follow, will tend to suggest that the government is going to lose at some level. If they were going to find for the government, why bother stringing it out? Johnson has pledged to abide by the ruling, but Keane refused to rule out that the government might suspend Parliament again ahead of the Brexit deadline next month. Whatever the court decide will prove explosive. Lawyers opposing the government have claimed that Johnson's action was illegal, saying that exceptionally long prorogation was intended to silence Parliament. But Keane, on behalf of the government, submitted that the courts must not cross the boundaries and intrude upon the business of Parliament. Sands says that the critical question was that the remedy the court would suggest if it did find against the government. Much will rest on the detail in the court's decision and how it is framed. If the court determines that Johnson misled the Queen, that would make the position untenable, according to Dominic Grieve, the former Conservative Attorney General. But the court might choose to frame its verdict around whether Johnson's decision stymied the passage of legislation through Parliament, which is potentially less incendiary. If the court does find against the government, its lawyers will be scrutinising the decision to see if they can go back and order a second prorogation on other grounds. It means that this week's decision is unlikely to be the end of the matter, whatever the justices decide. And once again, we could have had the verdict. Who knows? So this video could be out of date by this time this goes out. But nevertheless, they are right. This could send us into a massive constitutional crisis. And once again, and it's not only like we are in a constitutional crisis already. So to reiterate the point that was made in the article, this is going to be a crisis of volcanic proportions. So who knows what will happen? Who knows?